Hello, folks. Welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson. And in this episode, we're going to be recapping the Battle of Chicago, the Crosstown Cup, the Crosstown Classic, whatever you want to call it. I just realized that there's no sponsor for the season series between the White Sox and Cubs anymore. But the two teams do split. The White Sox won 2 out of 3 in May at Wrigley Field. The Chicago Cubs won 2 out of 3 in very dramatic fashion against the White Sox at Wrigley. We'll also be talking about why the DH combo of Randal Grichuk and Andrew Benintendi is working for the White Sox. And at the end of the show, also announcing local TV grades, I guess, for broadcasters is out. So how does John Strickland and Steve Stone stack up against the rest of Major League Baseball? Well, joining me is Sox Machine's managing editor and co-host of the podcast. It's Jim Margulis. And hello, Jim. Quite the series between the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Cubs this week. And we talked about in our previous episode, earnestly, I still don't think that this is a preview of the upcoming World Series. And I think we know why. For White Sox fans, a lot of anxiety in these last 3 days. Very dramatic wins for the Chicago Cubs. But I ask you, what did you learn about the White Sox in these 3 games against the Cubs?
Well, first of all, I need to note that there were indeed a couple of articles talking about how it was a potential October preview.
Who did
The
that? Why would they do that?
I won't name names. It's cheap heat. It's easy traffic. You can't knock the hustle.
I guess.
Um,
Yeah.
but okay, but to your point about what we learned about what the White Sox last 3 games, they are resilient. There's that. They were close in games. They should have won. They could have won all 3 games, and they could have won all 3 games without their number one or even number two bullpen plan in line.
Yeah.
Without 2 games without a starter, and having to go the bullpen or opener route. Uh, so I mean, you look at that versus the Cubs having starters, having 2 starters. The White Sox might have been interested at the trade deadline, and Kevin Gossman and Clay Holmes, and the Cubs having a deep lineup. The Cubs playing good defense, and the Cubs bullpen I think fared pretty well, even though they've been knocked a little bit. So I think the Cubs brought it, and the White Sox were outplayed in Game 1 and should have lost that game. They had no business being in a position to win it, and the fact that they almost did was it felt like a missed opportunity, or like, oh, they're going to be kicking themselves the rest of the week if this is the one chance that they wouldn't had to win a game with the next 2 pitching probables not looking great. But no, they were, they could have won Game 2, and they won Game 3, and they tightened up the brand of baseball defensively to where they weren't making the kind of mistakes, and they were pitching as well as they could possibly pitch. Eric Fetty, Jose Urquidy. So you look at that and you think, well, they still feel undermanned from a pitching side. And you can question Will Venable having Hagen Smith pitch to Pete Crow-Amstrong and say, is that going to be the kind of decision making you're going to see in these high leverage situations where you're making so many pitching changes in October? And cross that bridge when you get to it. But I think just overall, given how the White Sox looked early on, like they could lose all 3 games, given that when you look back at it, they could have won all 3 games. I think they represented themselves well against an opponent that maybe not superior, but I think at this point deeper. I think they have more of their ducks in a row, whereas the White Sox are still trying to iron some things out.
Yeah, I think, well, Nico Horner in that first game was a menace. We'll talk more about Pete Crow-Armstrong in a moment. In the second game, Alex Bregman stepped up. So the veterans that the Cubs do have stepped up for them in this series offensively. Jacob Webb, the White Sox really did not have a good game plan, or an answer, I should say, to that changeup. That was very effective. But like on a micro level, and this is something I'm curious about and watching for the rest of the season, Jim. I don't know if the White Sox bullpen is strong enough to hold a 1-run lead for multiple innings. Like for an inning, sure. But if they're up by a run in the 6th inning, I'm not very confident in the White Sox bullpen that they're going to be able to just hold on to that 1-run lead for the rest of the game. The offense needs to continue scoring late in order for me to feel more confident. Like if they give the bullpen a 3-run buffer like they did today, yeah, they got it. Like I have faith in the White Sox bullpen. They can hold on to it. But if they're up by 1 in the 6th inning, by no means is the game over.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say that about a lot of bullpens. I think it depends on whether they have to use one of their quality relievers to open, like they had to on Wednesday with Sean Newcomb. Like, if you have Sean Newcomb and Grant Taylor 8 and 9, you feel pretty good about that. Working backwards, Brian Hudson, I'm not so much a fan of him coming in high leverage with runners on. I think he's got a rickety record with inherited runners. But if you give him a clean inning, I feel okay about that as the third best reliever or the 7th inning guy. We're talking about full dedicated innings. So I think at that point, you're doing more or less okay. It's not a great bullpen. I don't think it's a bad one either. I think they're kind of in that middle. I think we've seen some bad bullpens in the Central, especially the Twins and the Tigers. They're not a bad bullpen.
Right.
I think they're just more or less ordinary. And the concern is that, and this came up with the series, if you have to have Grant Taylor go, more than 1 inning or have to work consecutive games, then who else do you have? And you have Newcomb, but then if he pitches multiple innings, who do you have? And that's when you get a lot of Trevor Richards, and I think Richards has done a pretty good job this year in fulfilling his niche that he has. This rubber armed, take the ball whenever, can pitch in low leverage just fine. He gets games over with. Medium leverage, he's okay. Can occasionally surprise you. Get to high leverage, asking too much. But yeah, I think with Huascar Brazoban struggling the way he has out of the gate, I think that's one missed opportunity to shore up the bullpen to be a little bit deeper.
And you can read Jim's latest feature on SoxMachine.com, breaking down the Brazoban experience for the White Sox since the trade deadline. Reader discretion is advised. The numbers are not all that great, but Jim did a great job breaking down on his struggle since he's joined the White Sox, which has been a bit surprising to me, Jim.
And I should say Jordan Hicks as well. Like, I feel like, if you have Hicks and Hudson in the 7th, Newcomb in the 8th, Taylor in the 9th, if they're ever able to arrange that bullpen in that order, I think you feel okay about it. But
Sure.
It's just the matter of having starters either need an opener for assistance or only going 3, 4, 5 innings at most. That's when, you start to stretch what is a good bullpen thin enough to where it feels inadequate.
And yeah, that first game, again, if Jordan Hicks is able to lock down that 9th inning, because he had an opportunity to get the save, but wasn't able to do it. The Cubs tied it. And of course, we all know about Crow-Amstrong hitting that walk-off home run. But, cap tip to Jose Urquidy, who shocked everybody. I'm sure even the White Sox themselves on Wednesday, as Urquidy, following the opener, 6 scoreless innings from Urquidy, 8 strikeouts, no walks, only allowed 2 hits on 68 pitches. And Jim, with Urquidy, as you wrote in the game recap, maybe the wind and Mother Nature played a factor. Some great defensive plays behind him, especially in the outfield. A fantastic catch by Sam Antonacci at the wall. We're going to talk a little bit more about Braden Montgomery, but Montgomery did an amazing job throwing out a runner at third base. Not even close, just really demonstrated why there's a lot of hope that he's going to be a plus right fielder for the White Sox for years to come. But that's what they really needed. Like, Urquidy showed that he might have staying power, Jim. Is that something that we take away from today's win?
Staying power is a little tricky, I might say. Like, I do think he looked very comfortable with the wind blowing in at Wrigley. Wasn't afraid to give up fly balls. I mean, he didn't give up anything for the first 3 innings. Struck out 8 of the first 10 batters he faced. So it was working to a large degree, to where, like, maybe you could have pitched in any ballpark and any weather and been just fine. But he did just, he brought some of that Johnny Cueto experience of just, you look at the stuff, it's not terribly impressive, but he looked just very comfortable, very at ease out there. He was kind of using the mound for calisthenics, doing some stretches, getting his hamstrings loosened up, kind of admiring the ivy and the scoreboard and the clock's ticking down. Then he just like walks to the mound and throws. So he looked very relaxed. He was giving a very a serene presence up there, the way that Cueto would when you just think of all the various uh, delivery variations he had, and the wide arsenal and the different arm slots and just all of the ways to get hitters out. And he did that for a full year, and it was amazing. And I think Urquidy is not as much of a trickster as Cueto was with just how much he had to offer, but in terms of the veteran guile, the kitchen sink, the throwing, I think he was anywhere from 73 to 95 on the velocity band. He was throwing changeups and curves and sinkers, basically, just toggling between them and just almost like on shuffle. Didn't matter handedness, didn't matter where, he's just spotting everything. So if he can summon that form, that's certainly useful. I mean, it's probably not going to be 6 shutout innings useful every single time, but it'll be a starter and a kind of multi-inning, or at least multiple times through type presence in either the rotation or the bullpen that the White Sox have lacked.
Well, with the White Sox winning the third game in this series, they end up splitting again with the Chicago Cubs. So when you look at the American League Central standings, and when it comes to the Tigers, because the White Sox entered this series with a 5.5 game lead, the Tigers themselves lost their series against the Pirates. However, the Minnesota Twins really shocked the MLB world as they swept the Atlanta Braves. So a good week for the Minnesota Twins. They are now in second place. They're just 4 games back of the Chicago White Sox. The Guardians are 61 and 66. So are the Tigers. Both those teams are 5.5 games back of the White Sox. And the Royals are 53 and 74. They're 13.5 games back of the White Sox. So when you take a look at the postseason probability from FanGraphs.com, the White Sox are at 66.6% chance. So it dipped a little bit before the series against the Chicago Cubs. And when you take a look at the division odds, the White Sox also dipped a little bit. They are now down to 54% of winning the American League Central, with the Minnesota Twins having the second best odds now at 22.5%. But again, the White Sox still have a pretty comfortable lead in the American League Central as they head into the weekend. There's more to discuss for this series between the White Sox and the Cubs, and we'll be talking about that after a quick word from our sponsors.
Hey, for those of you that are on your phones very often, or even if you don't use it much, you should check out your wireless bill and make sure that it is treating you well. It's summertime, you're feeling good, right, AJ? But are you spending too much on your wireless bill, and should Mint Mobile get involved?
As someone that has 2 college-age kids, Scott, they're always on their phone, whether it's they're checking their Snap, they're checking their DMs, they're checking their Twitter. I need $15 a month because I need unlimited quality coverage that Mint Mobile provides.
To get that new wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory. That's it. No catch. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Includes up to 20 gigabyte hotspot. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com.
Howard, my dad was T-boned by a utility vehicle. What should I do?
Aiken Law is injury law made personal. If you've been hurt at work, in a car accident, or suffered a medical mistake, call 312-6-million.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine Podcast. All right, so talking more about this series between the White Sox and the Cubs, and we're going to bring up Pete Crow-Amstrong. I know we cover the Chicago White Sox, and White Sox fans are absolutely tired of hearing about Pete Crow-Amstrong. But I think this is something to also take away from this series, Jim, is be able to identify an opposing hitter in a lineup, looking ahead to the postseason, and circling that name and saying, we can't let this guy beat us. The White Sox, for the first, game and a half, did not do a very good job against Pete Crow-Amstrong. He started this series red hot. Now, he ends up going 5 for 12, but I think he was 5 for his first 6 at-bats against White Sox pitching, where he hit 3 home runs. So he started this series on fire. The first game, he led the game off with a home run. He ended the game with a walk-off home run. I think that's the first time ever happened in Chicago Cubs history. And when it comes to PCA, Jim, obviously he's a very talented hitter, but in this year's series, as far as the Crosstown Classic between the White Sox and the Cubs, I feel like he grabbed all the headlines. The series at Wrigley Field grabbed the headlines because he got into a spat with a White Sox fan in center field. And then against the White Sox at Wrigley Field, he gets all the highlights because of the dramatic walk-off home run. What do you make of PCA? And is this also another lesson that the White Sox have to learn, is to making sure that the other team's best position player come the postseason doesn't beat them?
Yeah, he's good. I think that's when the White Sox saw him the first time, I think it was the low point of his season in a few ways. Not only the fan interaction that he had, but also he was batting eighth. He had some struggles early on with strikeouts, and OBP was down, and so he was more or less the guy at the bottom of the order. If he turns over the lineup, he can use his speed. Maybe hits the occasional homer if he's not getting on base, and he's playing great defense. And so you can use that guy, but maybe you don't want him hitting all the time. And now he's hitting leadoff. He's a guy they more or less want up, although Bregman, I think, maybe takes that mantle from him a little bit with the way he's hitting now. But either way, having the two of them in the top three is pretty tough. And yeah, I think, he was the main character of this series. And the first time around, it was pretty much insufferable, and the second time, I thought it was earned. It was great theater, especially in the home park. The way the fans responded to him. It's certainly annoying if you're a White Sox fan, but as Major League Baseball circulating the highlights, you have to love that. You have to love that scenery of just the game opening homers, the walk-off homers, circling third base, pounding his chest, and the fans responding back. It's good. It's good baseball, and it's fun for, maybe not fans of 29 teams, but a lot of them to watch and grab it. And you look at like what he's done and the competition, and you're talking about somebody, you hear the MVP chants, and probably, especially with Ohtani not pitching, Ohtani, when he was pitching as well as he's pitching, he was the lock for the MVP. Yeah. But if he's not pitching and if he's not playing defense, then you have PCA's offense and defense being two dimensions. Then I think that kind of more or less negates Ohtani's pitching contributions in the first half. And you think like, it's probably, given just playing both sides of the ball the rest of the season, as long as there's no big drop off, I think Ohtani will keep him honest. But it kind of looks like his award to lose.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation, because during the rain delay on TBS, the studio crew had a very long conversation about that. And of course, that opens up wounds for Pedro Martinez, who at the peak of his career probably deserved an MVP, if not two MVPs, for how well he pitched for the Boston Red Sox. But Pedro Martinez was talking about voter fatigue and how it impacted him, and how writers wanted a different pitcher to win an award because they didn't want to keep voting for the same guy over and over again. And they were making the case that if Ohtani doesn't win the MVP this year, it's because of voter fatigue. I don't necessarily agree with that, Jim, because Crow-Amstrong has an outside chance of having a 10 WAR season this year for his contributions offensively and defensively. I hope the White Sox don't have to play him again this season, because he looks like he's having a really special season.
Well, no, maybe you want the White Sox to play him again, because that means they won the pennant.
Yes. I don't know if I want the White Sox to play the Cubs in the World Series, though, but I guess I see your point.
I don't think you can be that picky, I think.
Yeah, I guess I see your point. Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Cubs get knocked out before that happens, because I don't know how the city of Chicago would handle the Cubs and White Sox.
That we can agree on, yes.
But yeah, so with PCA, he was the menace this series, and I think in the second half of the series, the White Sox figured it out. But before they figured out how to get PCA out, he did so much damage and really helped the Cubs win those first two games of the series. Now, what helped the White Sox offensively, and I guess I'm still surprised at how this is working out for the White Sox, and it's the vets at the designated hitter, Andrew Benintendi and Randal Grichuk. And in this series, Grichuk went 2 for 6. He had a home run, a double, and 3 RBIs. Benintendi then ended up going 2 for 8. So they combined for 4 for 14. Benintendi also had a big home run. He had 3 RBIs. He had the go-ahead RBI to give the White Sox a 1-0 lead on Wednesday. But Jim, like, what makes me scratch my head, and in a good way, why is this combo working? We've seen White Sox teams in the past, most famously the DH Hydra days, of trying to rotate guys at the DH spot. But Will Venable seems to have a script here. If it's a righty, it's Benintendi. If it's a lefty, it's Grichuk. It's really that simple. And they're finding success. Any idea why?
I think you can start with luck and maybe leave it at that, just because, Grichuk has been up and down. He's had some years where he's been a really valuable third outfielder or fourth outfielder, and he's had years where he doesn't show up necessarily, or the production isn't there. And then he has to settle for a minor league contract and kind of do it all over again. And that was kind of this year. He just didn't find a groove with the Yankees, and the Yankees are generally good at finding role players and having guys fit their system. So you wouldn't count on Grichuk coming over from the Yankees, where he was in this limited role, and coming over and being superior to what he did in the Bronx. So you can start with luck and just say, well, it might not have worked out this way in any other year, just because of the fluctuations that he's had. But beyond that, I think it is a testament to professionalism, especially with Benintendi, given what he was paid, given the expectations he had when he signed his contract, given how that hasn't worked out. He's seen his defensive responsibilities whittled away. He's been a platoon bat. He could have handled this poorly, or he could have pouted, or said he deserved better, or looked at the rest of the lineup and said, I'm more accomplished than them, and tried to more or less campaign his way into being a corner outfielder again. But he's accepted it gracefully, and you haven't heard any griping. Like, I think any griping he does is about himself, and he's not necessarily the most effusive guy, but he tends to point the finger at himself first when he's not getting the playing time he wants. But it's working. This limited role is working for him, and then you have Grichuk come in a very limited role, a very disciplined role, in terms of Venable not asking too much from him, not trying to play the hot hand, just saying, no, you're working against lefties, you're going to hit against lefties, and you're going to hit against lefties as soon as possible. Like, we're not going to wait for a late inning situation to get to you and hope it gets to you. We're going to have you hit against fading starters, or we're going to have you hit against the front end of the bullpen. We're going to try to just find the opportunity whenever it first arises, not wait for it later. So I think you're seeing a pretty aggressive deployment. You're seeing like a very transparent communication and plan with when these guys are going to play, and what, if they're not starting, what situation, what pitchers they might be facing. So I think the information is about as streamlined as you can get. And so I think if it comes down to executing game plans, I think it's pretty simple for them. So between them having been around the block and knowing what they're doing, and still having some life in their bat, and also not being asked to do anything they can't do, beyond the bounds of like a occasional start, or entering as a pinch hitter and not being pinch hit for again. And so you might have to face a righty later on if you're Grichuk, or vice versa. Then, I think they're put in position to succeed about as well as you possibly can under the rules of Major League Baseball and the regular batting orders and limited substitutions and whatnot. And they're certainly running with it.
And Andrew Benintendi has been really good for the White Sox with runners in scoring position. I do think that helps with this lineup, where at times, even though his numbers for the season are really good, like Miguel Vargas and Munetaka Murakami, they're leaving some meat on the bone. Like, there's good opportunities for them to poke a single and score a run. Like, that was the difference in game 2. Like, Alex Bregman is just looking in that 9th inning to poke something into the outfield, a line drive, because that's all that's going to be required in that at bat. He's not looking for the dramatic home run. He just needs a single. That's all I'm going to focus on. And Andrew Benintendi was able to do that against Clay Holmes, which the White Sox were struggling the first couple times around against Holmes. But when there's a runner at second base, Andrew Benintendi poked a single to center field because that's all that's required in that situation. So I do think this really helps out solidify and add more depth to the lineup that I know you've been talking about in the last few episodes, Jim, about this White Sox offense. I think having these veteran guys step up, even though it does surprise me a little bit with Benintendi and Grichuk, I'm glad they're here for the White Sox sake. And I'm still thinking that there's going to be even more moments for both Benintendi and Grichuk where they're going to come up clutch for the White Sox, especially in September.
Yeah, I think he's got a few different clubs in his bag. And, Murakami, he's got
one.
It's not necessarily one swing, but like he can occasionally work the ball the other way, but it has to be how he plans on being pitched, and he certainly sees enough pitches to where like he wants his pitch to drive. And Vargas, I think maybe the next evolution Vargas is it feels like he can hit higher than 230. It feels like he's got the plate discipline. It feels like he's got the plate coverage. Doesn't strike out a ton, so it feels like he could probably sharpen up the hitting tool a bit to be a little bit more of a versatile hitter and more of an all fields guy. If he doesn't, he's fine. Like he's doing great. You don't want to let perfect be the enemy of good enough, but it seems like if he's going to improve, that might be one way he improves. But like we saw it with even when Colson's on, he's got the one swing, and so he can be pitched to. But I think Benintendi, and we talked about Tristan Peters. He's another guy who has just a flatter bat path, has the ability to ambush up, cover down, poke the ball away. So perhaps you have these pitchers who kind of get into a certain rhythm in just working above bat paths with steep swings, and or getting chases depending on who they're facing. And so maybe they're lulled into a certain kind of pitching that somebody like Benintendi, when they show up in the middle of the lineup around a bunch of guys who can't strike out or can be pitched to and in kind of predictable fashions, and he is able to spoil something, perhaps that's a case where variety and diversity in the lineup helps to just make pitchers have to execute in more than one way.
Yeah, I think the next evolution for Vargas, Jim, the type of swing that he needs, if you recall Miguel Cabrera, where against a righty, if a righty was trying to throw something soft to the outside corner, like a breaking pitch, Cabrera was just so good at just flipping that pitch to right field. And I feel like that's the next evolution, Miguel Vargas, understanding with 2 strikes with a runner on second base. If you're going to throw that slider at me, just having that swing in the bag of just flipping that pitch for a single to right field. Yeah, it's not sexy, and it's not going to be a hit that does a lot of damage, but you're still getting damage done because it's going to score that runner. Like, I'm with you. I think that's the next evolution in Vargas's game. He's already evolved so much since he's joined the White Sox. And again, he's doing well with runners in scoring position. But both Benintendi and Grichuk had their moments in this series for the White Sox, especially in that first game where they were really the offense for the White Sox. Now, somebody that also had a big game and that we referred to earlier in the show, and that's rookie right fielder Braden Montgomery. And in the series against the Cubs, he went 3 for 12, but he had a big double, a 2-run double to extend the White Sox lead from 1-0 to 3-0. He absolutely threw a hose to third base to nail Tyrone Taylor, who was trying to tag up at second base and was out by a mile. So that throw was over 95 miles an hour from Braden Montgomery in right field. And again, he has a plus throwing arm. We've known that since his days in college when he was a pitcher, but then he moved over to right field permanently when he transferred from Stanford to Texas A&M. He showcased that. Base running, not all that great. And when you take a look at Montgomery's season stats, again, this is just about 58 games now for Braden Montgomery, so he hasn't even reached 60 games this year. Braden Montgomery's hitting .238 with a .328 on base percentage. He's slugging just .374, but he is a league average hitter. Weighted runs created plus is at 100. He's got 4 home runs and 30 RBIs, and he's slightly below 1 WAR. He's at 0.8 WAR. So let's do a quick check here for Braden Montgomery in his rookie season, Jim. How do you think he's progressing so far?
I think he's doing okay. I think he's keeping his head above water. My concerns about him when he was promoted was one, how would the plate discipline hold up? He has some swing and miss in his game with his left-handed, right-hand swings, different holes, and you only get so many opportunities to rep your right-hand swing when you don't have many left-handed pitchers in your league in the minors. So I thought, maybe he's going to have some swing and miss issues in the majors that would take time to iron out. That hasn't necessarily happened so much. Like, the strikeout rate is acceptable. He's drawing enough walks. I think he's generally under control in the batter's box, so that's a pleasant surprise. My other concern as a hitter was that just so many ground balls, and that's still sticking with him. That's why the slug is down. Nearly 60% batted balls in the ground. That he's producing around it, that he's hitting the balls hard enough to get through and help the batting average a little bit, does buoy his value. I think he's been pretty good defensively in the outfield. I think sometimes where you see him, I think, get a little bit excited, or like the routes are maybe a little bit zigzaggy because he gets started quickly in one direction, then has to adjust. A couple times he's rushed throws, speed of the game thing, but I think you see the athleticism out there, and we're not used to seeing athleticism in right field for the White Sox. And so the idea of makeup speed is a foreign concept. And so when he does break a little bit inefficiently towards the ball, he's able to make it up, and generally all is well that ends well. So I think overall the package is pretty exciting. I think when he goes in the off season, probably some work to do in elevating the ball and not rolling over so many pitches. But I think given the general, not necessarily rawness, because like he has some polish in his game, and the fact that he can tell balls from strikes pretty well in the minors. But I think the imbalance in the swings, and then just learning what pitchers are doing to him. He succeeded even with kind of concerning ground ball rates in the minors, because the balls that he lifted did so much damage. And I think, he's getting by right now, and it seems like he's the kind of guy who is motivated to do more than get by. So I assume that, give him a full off season of just learning what pitchers are doing for him, and then probably some either drills, mechanical tweaks, etc., to go in the off season program with. That I imagine he'll solve that. But I think, I think he's a work in progress.
Hey, he's doing well. I mean, he's finding ways to be productive. Yes, it'd be great if, like, when the White Sox brought him up, we were hoping that he would be another power bat in the lineup. That really hasn't come to fruition. But I think he does a good job, Jim, of working counts. Again, I think he's a plus defender in right field. I have no worries at all in right field anymore defensively for the White Sox. Man, it has been a long time since we've been able to say that for the Chicago White Sox. So I do feel like they have found their long-term solution in right field. Eventually, I do think we'll see more power from Braden Montgomery as he continues to adjust to major league pitching, but he takes professional at-bats, and he comes through, especially in RBI situations, putting the ball in play like we saw against the Cubs. So I do like what we've seen. Maybe it hasn't been the immediate impact we were expecting when the White Sox called him up, but overall, it's still been a good experience for Braden Montgomery in his rookie season. We're going to take one last break for a word from our sponsors, but coming up next, the White Sox have a makeup game against the Atlanta Braves. We'll quickly preview that one. And Awful Announcing just released their local TV broadcast rankings. Where does John Schriffen and Steve Stone stack up against the rest of Major League Baseball? We'll discuss that next on the Sox Machine Podcast.
SeatGeek is the official ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, and anytime you want to go to a game, you should go to SeatGeek. I used to call the director of team travel. I used to call the traveling secretary, whatever they want to be called, KP, to try to get a seat. But on SeatGeek, I can pick my own seat, and I can pick where I want to sit instead of being told where to sit.
Yeah, it's a great option. And summer is coming to an end here soon. I'm going out and finding all the day games possible, all the warm weather cities, so I could stay in this tank top. I can watch very competitive baseball. As the calendar turns into fall, I want to make sure that I get the most out of this tank top and warm weather, and SeatGeek is where I would go and get my seats.
You can use code Territory10 for 10% off your next set of MLB tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off MLB tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine Podcast. The Chicago White Sox and the Atlanta Braves are making up a game that was rained out back in June in the original gauntlet, as the White Sox were on the verge of sweeping the Atlanta Braves. But now it is a 1:10 p.m. Central Time start. Grant Holmes will take the ball for the Atlanta Braves, and it'll be Anthony Kay for the Chicago White Sox. And Jim, in this makeup game, the White Sox really could use a strong start from Anthony Kay. I think we're all exacerbated now about talking about like the White Sox pitching staff is tired. Yes, they are tired. They really could use another strong start from Anthony Kay, who's been very good as of late for the White Sox. Maybe even pushing him if he does struggle early against the Braves. It'd be wonderful if they could get 6 innings out of Anthony Kay. And I think, in a way, kind of necessary as the New York Mets come into town this weekend.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about fatigue, like at least the White Sox didn't have to travel. They are in Chicago the entire time. They'll continue to be in Chicago. So while this is a lot of games in a row, at least they have that going for them versus the Braves. They've lost, 5 of 6, got swept by the Twins in Minnesota. Then they have to go to Chicago. Then they have to go to Milwaukee. So I think while the White Sox have some fatigue to contend with, a little bit of the grind wearing on them. The Braves aren't in great shape either. So I think Anthony Kay, he's shown the ability to weather some rough starts and some rough patches and deliver 5 innings, even when it's not looking great. The Braves offense seems like it's a little bit uninspired right now or unimpressive right now. So he's not catching an opponent at the height of their powers. So if it's about, like Hawk Harrelson used to say, if it's about not who you play, but when you play them, I think it's a pretty good draw. It is just one game, so we'll see, what happens, small sample, all that. But given just the circumstances that both teams are facing, like this is a nice little opportunity for the White Sox to pick up a game if current trends hold.
And Holmes gives up 1.5 runs per 9 innings. So maybe the White Sox find a couple home runs early, give Anthony Kay.
Home run, yeah, I said 1.5 runs per game. I was like,
I'm sorry, 1.5 home runs
yeah,
per
okay.
game. Not
there you
he's
go.
Not that good.
1.5 home runs. He's a quality major league starter, but
he is. There's a big difference though between FIP and ERA for Grant Holmes, but he gives up 1.5 home runs per start. So let's see if the White Sox can find a way to hit a couple home runs to give Anthony Kay some buffer and the White Sox bullpen as well, and who they actually have available. This might be another opportunity for Jordan Hicks, maybe even Hagen Smith as well, to try to help out close out another win for the Chicago White Sox. But again, that's a Thursday, 1:10 p.m. Central Time start. Will be, of course, you can go to soxmachine.com to be part of the game thread, and we'll be recapping it there as well. But before we sign off on this episode of the Sox Machine podcast, a few minutes before we started recording, Awful Announcing has released their rankings of the MLB local TV broadcasting partners. And for the Chicago White Sox, it's John Triffin and Steve Stone. And really, it's the entire broadcast themselves. And Awful Announcing ranks the White Sox broadcasters 21st in Major League Baseball. So it's not so much Awful Announcing, it's those that read Awful Announcing. So it's thousands of votes. And for White Sox fans, the most common grade that they gave the TV broadcast is a C, about 43% of the votes. About 71%, though, are in the range of A to C. So that's progress as well. Last year, John Triffin and Steve Stone ranked 27th out of the 30 teams in the local TV. And Jim, I know how much you love a Triffin minute, but with these rankings, do you agree with other White Sox fans that it is getting better for the local TV broadcasting team?
It is. Part of that is the White Sox being good. And I think it's part of the rising tide lifts all boats, and the White Sox providing entertainment with their style of play versus the dark ages of Jason Benetti having to entertain fans and bring Steve Stone along for the ride, and then watching John Triffin not be able to do that during his first year when they're losing 121 games because he just doesn't have the baseball reps to cover that much airtime when the team isn't doing well. So to see the progress that they've made kind of correspond with the way the White Sox are improving, like, yeah, that makes sense. That holds up. Um, I think the overall broadcast with you adding Brooke Fletcher and talking more about direct lines to the clubhouse, talking about the farm system, cutting back to Chuck and Ozzy, they've done, the CHSN team has done what it can to, I think, to take the focus off Schriffen and make him more of somebody leading directing a conversation or directing, almost a production versus somebody who's using his personality to set the tone or I guess the information, the agenda for the broadcast. It's more of a collaborative effort. So I think that also helps. But I think Steve Stone I think he was more engaged with Benetti, and I think he has a tendency to just kind of go into autopilot with Schriffen. Now that Schriffen is good, he's good enough. He's built up enough reps to where like he's fine on the baseball action side versus his first year when Stone really had to step up and really kind of guide him or nurse him through it. But the thing about Stone is like he's just real good. Obviously he's been doing this for decades and decades, but like he's really good at getting in and out of a sentence and out of a point. It's a really easy listen. Whether he's saying anything particularly mind blowing or not, like it all sounds, whether he's making a good point or an ordinary point or maybe an outdated point, it all sounds professional and good and easy to listen to. And that just makes the broadcast a whole lot easier. And when you have like Gordon Beckham, who makes good points, but sometimes just has a hard time finding the words to deliver them concisely, and I can sympathize with him because I have that problem sometimes as well. But he has recent experience and it's kind of useful, but can't quite get there. And then you have Dan Plesac, who I think it came up in the Sox Machine comments. Like sometimes just the broadcast gets gross with him. Just a lot of talk about food and digestion and stains and hygiene and habits. Like it just kind of devolves a lot into kind of the same, jokes and, and just kind of weird topics that just consume too much airtime. But when Stone's in the booth, like you see that the experience and just how polished he is. And it, regardless of exactly, how you might quibble with what he says, the way he says it is just, he still has his fastball in that regard. And that makes it so much easier.
I don't know if anything has changed, but before this season started, I was told that this was the last year of John Schriffen's contract with the Chicago White Sox and CHSN. Maybe something has changed. The White Sox haven't announced it. We haven't gotten a press release from CHSN that if Schriffen has been extended. Quite frankly, with the CBA coming up and we are expecting an MLB lockout, I don't think any MLB team is in a rush to announce who their broadcasting team is going to be for the 2027 season and beyond. We do know that Steve Stone is sticking around because he signed a contract extension, I guess, a couple years ago. So he's under contract with CHSN. I think Schriffen's done enough. If the White Sox just wanted to renew as far as that contract and continue or have that continuity going to next season, because to your point, Jim, when it comes to that big moment in the game, I think Schriffen has done an excellent job stepping up. Where if you look at the overall broadcast itself, because he's always going to be compared to Jason Benetti. 90% of that broadcast, I prefer Jason Benetti over John Schriffen. But the Edgar Caro home run and the other big moments this season, I do think that Schriffen does an excellent job rising up to the occasion where it's almost like Hawk Harrelson, where you wanted to hear Hawk have the big home run call than Jason Benetti. I still think Benetti struggles a little bit when it does come to the big moments as far as the home run call. But Don Arcillo and the San Diego Padres on the TV side, they were ranked number 1. Don does a fantastic job covering everything. I agree with baseball fans that Arcillo is number 1, but I've been listening to a lot of the White Sox radio broadcast, and Len and DJ are fantastic. I think that is by far and away the best broadcasting duo the White Sox have right now. is Len Casper and Darren Jackson. And I'm excited for them that if this team can win the division and make the postseason, both Len and DJ are going to be able to broadcast those playoff games, because obviously CHSN will not be broadcasting those games. Instead, they go back to, I think Peacock gets some playoff games and TBS gets some divisional series games before Fox takes over.
Yeah, I've listened to my share of Len and DJ as well. Like I listened to him this afternoon mowing the lawn for the first few innings, and I think it was through the fourth inning, and just listening to them pick apart, or not pick apart, but just watch Urquidy and explain in great detail exactly what he's doing between pitches, and just enjoying each other's, like they enjoy each other's company, and
They do.
that makes them a good handling. That was the thing. Once I realized that Darren Jackson and Ed Farmer liked each other, and really were, really had warm feelings towards each other, my entire understanding of the broadcast changed. At first, it felt like an arranged marriage, and just like, these are just, boy, the White Sox penchant for loyalty is really biting him here. But then, like, you'd listen to him really closely, and your mileage could vary in terms of the quality of the broadcast. But you could tell that they liked each other. They liked needling each other. They liked undermining each other, and it was a fascinating dynamic. But I think you're seeing now with Len and being more that straightforward, traditional broadcast voice that really gives DJ a lot of room to be himself and have that sense of humor, but also get in the analysis more and not have somebody necessarily undermining his points the way a Farmer might, or just like straight up disagreeing with him and bickering a little bit. And you just get the idea that like they're a good hang. Like, when I listen to him, just like, if I come in from listening to the radio, I don't necessarily turn it off right away or run for the TV. I like having them on, and I will, I'll do some other things and have them on through an inning or through a next couple innings to keep it going before switching the TV and see what Schriffen and Stone are saying.
But in a way, for the CHSN team, again, launching a new network when the team has a historically bad season, to continue to progress, this is good progress for them. So congrats to CHSN. You're earning more goodwill from White Sox fans with your broadcast, and excited to see what you guys are able to do in upcoming seasons. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. This is a video podcast now. Many of you have subscribed recently to the Sox Machine YouTube channel. Thank you so much for doing so. You can continue doing that for all of our videos at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh as we continue putting highlights of this show on Instagram and other highlights as well. Of course, being part of the Foul Territory Network, we'll be sharing some of their highlights and clips from the show. So again, follow us on social media, and you can help support Sox Machine by becoming a Sox Machine subscriber at SoxMachine.com/products. That gets you the all access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball. We're continuing to work out what we're going to be doing as far as covering a potential White Sox postseason this season. So if you would like to support Sox Machine, and some of you have been reaching out to email like how you can help out, go to SoxMachine.com/products and sign up for a subscription. It gets you the ad-free version of both the website and the podcast. So again, SoxMachine.com/products. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Foul Territory Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.